With that being said, are there any questions for me before I step aside? Okay.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Jeff. I was the director of our Out of Darkness ministry at the Atlanta Dream Center. My role's changed a little bit, but we call him Pastor Paul. He's the founder of the Dream Center 14 years ago. And honestly, like, today has been awesome, and it's hard. We've talked about some awkward stuff, some intense stuff, and we just kind of let each period become whatever it needs to be, and none of them have looked the same yet. And for whatever reason, because we're doing a rotation of 3 different periods, you guys are here for the one on I'm not just going to sit here and tell you, like, be safe on your social media. I want to tell you how social media is actively used as a recruiting ground by traffickers. I want to tell you how sexting intersects your lives in the trafficking issue, and also pornography and the connections between pornography and trafficking. Now, it would be really easy to be like, okay, like, this guy's just some prude who doesn't think everything sex is bad and da-da-da-da-da. That's not my goal today. Like, how much am I getting paid to be here, Miss Howell? Did she leave already? 0, guys. I am here. I am getting paid? Is that what you're saying?
You got nachos.
I got nachos, it's true. I can't say
Oh,
that.
man,
I got delicious nachos. Guys, truly, I drove from the south side of Atlanta to come here and spend the day because I am so passionate for you to be protected and for you guys to be protectors of your friends, your classmates, your siblings, your neighborhoods. So I genuinely believe and care about the things that I'm going to talk to you about today. To start out, when I looked at this, I'm just going to be totally honest with you. I don't know what half of these apps even are. So I could easily sit down and let one of you come up. I told second period, my first idea was I was going to point to each one, and whoever like yelled out what it was first, I was going to throw candy to. And then my wife was like, nope, you're talking to high schoolers. They don't want you to throw candy at them. But then when I said that in second period, they're like, are you kidding, man? I want your candy. But I'm sorry, I don't have candy. But I do want to go through these, and y'all I think I have 2 of these things. But y'all just shout out what each of these apps are.
Instagram.
Yep.
Tumblr. Vine.
One person knew this last time. Say 5. This one? No. Somebody said it's something called Whispers.
I still don't know.
All right, I don't know what it is either. All right.
Kid.
Yeah, that's the easy one.
Snapchat. Facebook.
It's the new. Yeah, it's not the F anymore. I guess Facebook is now like pointing at you.
Tinder and
Yeah. So,
Dropbox.
guys, the truth is, historical forced prostitution and sex trafficking was happening on the streets, in motel rooms, in shadows of alleys. We kind of have this notion that, hey, the way not to get trafficked is if a scary looking van with tinted windows pulls up next to you, just run the other way. The van's going to open up, they're going to grab you, pull you in, and traffic you. Kind of like the Taken notion, right? Who's seen Taken? It's a great movie, though. I'm not hitting on Taken. So the truth is now, a lot of those things, some of it still happens, but the majority of recruiting for trafficking happens in this world right here. And there's 2 forms that it happens. There's indirect and direct. So I'm gonna use a story that happened, and you guys might have heard this in the news last year. It's like February 2017. Anybody heard of the website Seeking Arrangement? Anybody? I see a head nod. Somebody want to like boldly summarize what Seeking Arrangement is, or does truly nobody know? Do you know in the back? Go for it. That's close, but you're probably gonna go and hear what it really is. So, anybody ever heard of like the whole sugar daddy, sugar baby phenomenon? Okay, so this is something that historically, like if I was sitting in your chair, I would do this. I would have the same reaction, like, oh, sugar daddy, like somebody who gets married to somebody else because they want them for their money. This website was created for wealthy men older, wealthy, established men to meet young, attractive women. So the sugar daddy posts up his wealth, his allowance. So basically he says, I'm looking for a companion and I'm willing to pay X amount of dollars per month for companionship. And then they can message the girls can message the guys. The number 3 university in the United States of America with female students participating is Georgia State University. Number 3 in total number of women involved, and number 3 fastest growing in terms of new signups. So what's happening is, if you think of trafficking as somebody who has taking care of somebody who doesn't have, you've got men who are leveraging their money to young women who typically, they either can't afford tuition, they can't afford books, they can't afford their housing, so they're going there to find someone who can pay for those things for them, and they're entering into basically prostitution relationships, okay? There was a special that I saw on CNBC, and they did such an incredible job. It was a full hour long. They followed this girl beginning to end, and she's like, at this point when they're interviewing her, she's like 20 years old, she's very intelligent, she's confident, she owns her own dance studio, and she's talking about how empowering this whole world has felt to her, and it gets to the end, and the lady, Lisa Ling is her, and it was called This Is Life, if any of you watched that with Lisa Ling. She says, so how did you get involved in this? And the girl says, honestly, like I was 18 years old and homeless, and I couldn't eat, so I signed myself up for this website. So here's somebody like in utter desperation, and the only thing she felt that she had that could bring any value was her body and her appearance. And there are men who prey on that opportunity. Like, here's somebody who's vulnerable. She wouldn't be with me otherwise, but she needs my money, so I'm gonna step into that. And okay, so why am I talking about seeking arrangement? So this trafficking case last year in February 2017, there's a guy named Kendrick Roberts, and he set up a profile on Seeking Arrangement. He was a 35-year-old guy, and he was messaging girls between the age ranges of 19 to 23. And what he was doing was he says, hey, I want to be an agent for aspiring, he said athletes, which is an industry term for escorts, athletes and models. And if you sign up with my company, you can help me build this company from the ground up. I'll bring you to Atlanta, I'll put you up in my housing, and we're gonna build this like mecca company together. He had an Instagram account for the business called Livestar Nation, and basically what he would do was when the girls came, he would have them sign a contract. It was not a legal contract at all, but they didn't know any better. They thought they were signing a binding contract. And the deal was that they would get paid $150,000 when the contract was fulfilled, but it never said how or when the contract would be fulfilled, so he never wound up paying any of them. And he also promised a $200,000 signing bonus. Then what actually would happen is they'd move into the house, cameras in every room, every bedroom, every common area. He had eight of these girls living there between 19 and 23. He would get them all tattooed on both of their wrists with numbers. Nothing. It wasn't like his name or I love mom or anything like that. It was like barcodes basically on both of their wrists. All the girls' tattoos matched each other, and it had the initials LOP, which stood for loyalty over pride. And what he would do is not really even slowly, he would strip down their individuality, their uniqueness. So now they all have matching tattoos. He made them all wear the same clothes, the same shoes, carry the same purses. Basically just made them, the industry's term is stable. He made all these girls part of his stable. And that whole notion of tattooing that traffickers and pimps use now was taken from cattle branding and the idea that you brand your property. And so every time those girls look at that tattoo, it's, hey, he owns me. And it tells other traffickers and pimps that, hey, these girls are accounted for, okay? So within the first 2 weeks, he sent the girls as they would come. They didn't all come at the same time. He would send them to the Dominican Republic and pay $10,000 for them to get breast implants. And then when they got back, he said, if you leave me, I'll find you and I'll cut out your implants because I spent $10,000. That's my investment in your career and in your future. And then he would set up for them to strip at all the local Metro Atlanta strip clubs. So he arranged the transportation. He had employees at every club, a doorman, a bouncer, a bartender, that would see, because they all knew what the girls were making at the club, they would see what each girl made, and they would tell Kendrick, hey, Lydia made $800 tonight. So if Lydia gets home and hands over $600, he says, where's my other $200? And she's like, how did you, like, so he's instilling the sense of, hey, you can't do anything without me knowing about it. Takes all their money and he says, hey, I know I'm taking all your profits, but in return for that, because I need it to build the business, I'm going to double your signing bonus, which never happened, of course. Hold on one sec. I'm screaming myself hoarse. Anybody hear this case, by the way? Okay, so this is how this comes into play. So he used Seeking Arrangements as a direct recruiting tool, but then he used his Instagram account as basically a social media advertisement. So this, if I had time, I would show you guys all the video that's all taken off. That law enforcement took down everything, but I captured it before they took it out. It's videos of him flipping stacks of $100 bills, and the caption says, eating my 10K breakfast, and he's got an AK-47 in his lap. It's, hey, if you need representation, hit me up. And it's like a table, a dining room table covered in stacks of $100 bills. And it's, do you need money, looking for a new opportunity? So he's posting this stuff, and this lifestyle too. So he was posting pictures from the Westin Perimeter Hotel, which if any of y'all have been to Perimeter Mall, that's where he was taking the girls, showing them a night on the town. And so this girl, finally 20 years old, three of these young women were single moms and had brought their children with them too. And he would use the children as leverage to make sure they didn't leave. A 20-year-old calls 911 and says, hey, I don't even know if I have the right to call you or not, because I guess I'm kind of here by choice and I signed a contract to be here, but this guy keeps telling us if we leave, he's going to kill us, and I don't want to be here anymore. And the lady's like, what? Like, I don't understand. Like, what's going on? So the local police department had gotten a trafficking training. They respond, arrest him, charge him with 12 counts of human trafficking and weapons possession. And the judge, a woman judge, which you would think maybe she would be more compassionate to these girls, gets this case in front of her, and she says, what are we doing in criminal court? Like, this is not a crime, this is a breach of contract. If you guys have a problem, just go sue him in civil court and get the money that he owes you. Like, that's what we're dealing with, is a failed business negotiation. So she threw out all the criminal charges against him. So when the district attorney found out, he gathered, anybody know what a grand jury is? Do you mind summarizing it real quick?
It's just a jury of higher ranked judges that line up. Yeah, I think Florida, there's 3 of them on grand jury, right?
So yeah, basically what happens is they pull together, so that instead of going to this one judge who would normally be assigned the case, they pull this group of people together, they present their evidence to them, and then the grand jury can either say, no, you don't have enough evidence to bring charges, or they can bring the charges back again. The grand jury indicted him on the original 12 charges and added additional charges to it. So in the end, it worked. He's waiting for trial right now. So I don't have Seeking Arrangements on here, but the Seeking Arrangement dating website, Instagram, I'll tell you a story about Facebook. There is a pimp that got arrested in the Midwest, and he gave these guys, a lot of these guys, they're so arrogant, like they'll tell you everything, all their tricks, all their strategies and everything. And he said, he did an interview and he said, I would Facebook message 100 young women a day. I didn't know these women. I would just go down through my feed, my suggested friends, and just message, and ask them if they're interested in learning how they can make extra money. And he said maybe only 10 would respond. And then out of those 10, I would tell them, well, this is essentially what I'm looking for you to do. Do you want to meet up? And then maybe 1 or 2 were like, hey, I really need some money. I'd like to hear more about it. But that's how he would slowly build up the women that he had in the forced prostitution situation. So, and then you go, well, wait. Like, they were responding. How is this forced prostitution? What happens is, and I've got this on another slide, I'll show you later, but inevitably, like, whatever's happening through social media and online, at some point has to become a face-to-face meeting. And in most cases, it's not, hey, do you want to make money? It's the romantic approach. Like, it's starting up an online relationship, and then they meet and they start to hang out. One guy spent 6 months on one girl dating her before he eventually got her to the point where he flipped the switch, raped her, and then had a group of friends at a party do the same. And then that kind of broke her to the point where he leveraged all the other things he learned. She had a daughter and all these other things that he used. So how many of y'all, and especially ladies, have gotten weird, creepy messages or friend requests or things online? Yeah, a lot of you have, right? My sister has, my wife has. So one of the things that fits into this, so not all trafficking and prostitution happens this way, but where there's truly like a trafficking type organization, at the core, in the center of it, you always have the trafficker who's calling the shots. But then anybody ever heard of the term bottom girl before? Is it you? What's a bottom girl?
It's the one that keeps the lowest spot.
Yeah, that's right. So the bottom girl is the girl who's usually been with the guy the longest, and she sees the opportunity not to be the one out having sex 10 to 30 times a night, but she can become the recruiter, the one who keeps the other girls in line, the one who makes sure their makeup's done right, make sure they're when he leaves the hotel room, she becomes the enforcer. Well, imagine now in the recruiting sense, we talked earlier today about foster care and runaways, and like how, anybody know the average age that someone enters into the sex trafficking world here in the States? 14, 12, that's the range, is 11 to 14. So you've got these young people who are usually victims of childhood sexual abuse, broken homes, they're running away, they're falling through the cracks of the foster care system. And what happens now if a woman approaches them on social media? Hey, I've been following you for a while. Looks like you're going through some hard things. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. Well, how much more trusting are you going to be of a woman than some guy you don't know, right? So in a lot of these situations, the women are doing the recruiting now because it raises less of a red flag for whoever it is they're trying to lure in. Another thing that we've seen happen is someone who gets caught up in trafficking, the trafficker makes her sign into her social media accounts, and then he uses her account to message her friends, hey, my boyfriend wants to introduce you to some people, why don't you come to this party with us? And they actually use that girl as I'll flip to the next slide here, someone who's familiar to give a sense of safety that lures other people into the same stuff, right? So some of the things that we see, anybody heard the term grooming before? Yeah. So, man, so you got everything. So y'all know the Larry Nassar case with the U.S. Olympic gymnastic team? If you guys watched any of the testimony, so Larry Nassar was the team physician who was molesting the majority of the young female gymnasts that were coming through the Olympic and national team programs. And as they now as adults have been sharing their testimonies and reflecting back on what happens, they talk about, he would do things and say, hey, this is our secret. And he would take care of me. And when my coach yelled at me, he would be the one to encourage me. And just all these little things now that they can say, man, he was grooming me the whole time. Like he was giving me a sense of safety, familiarity, trust, establishing secrecy, doing things that, hey, the clinic room is off limits to parents, so that's just your time to come in and tell me what you're feeling, what's going on, and that's where all the assault was happening. So very rarely is it this direct, violent approach right out of the gate by a trafficker, and it's more of a, hey, let me lure you into a sense of safety, relationship, how are things at home, how are things at school, like I'm that safe person you can talk to, and they start to drive wedges between the truly healthy people in that person's life and try to set themselves up to be that person. You guys with me? Following? All right, any questions so far about social media? Just pause and let you think for a second.
Hey, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was in Holland, I learned they did this study of relation guys got together relationally. And in Holland, you all heard of the red light district in Holland? Amsterdam? It's the most famous red light district in the world, where there's windows, girls are sold, and everything. So the Dutch government did a study of they call guys who get girls in by via relationship. Over there, they call them lover boys. So the average lover boy, what they're called, will groom a girl for up to 2 years, preparing her to come into the lifestyle.
Yeah.
So not just so anywhere from 6 months to 2 years is what these guys are willing to invest money, time, everything to get you.
So the term that we use is basically like Romeo pimp. So it's not it's not the traditional notion, but it's the boyfriend style pimp that promises we'll get married one day, we'll have a house in the hill, all that kind of stuff. And this girl who's for her life just been told that she's worthless or she'll never amount to anything. Well, now here's this guy who's feeding all of these deep emotional needs and preying on that. So let's talk now. I want to shift into sexting for a minute. So y'all know what it is, right? I don't have to give a definition of what sexting is. So I want to tell you guys, about 2 years ago, I was doing a session like this, and at the end, a senior came up to me. She was 17 years old, and she said, hey, I met a guy online. I've never actually met him in person yet. We started talking. We fell in love. He is 23 years old, lives in a different city, and at first he just would say, hey, would you just send me a pic? I miss you. Like, I can't wait to meet you, but can you send me a picture? Like, I want to see you. So she would just send a normal picture, no big deal. Then it became, hey, I want to see more of you. Like, you're so beautiful. Like, would you send me a picture of you in your underwear? She would do it. Then he said, hey, like, I want to see more of you. Like, I can't wait till we meet. Can you send me a topless picture? And she was like, like, I'm not really comfortable with that. I don't want to do that. And he was like, come on, baby. Like, if you're safe with me. Like, nobody else will ever see it, I promise. She sends the picture. Then he says, hey, like, just, I want complete nudes. Like, send me a video, do X, Y, and Z. I won't go into graphic detail, but she's like, no, I honestly, like, that's where I draw the line. Like, I wasn't comfortable sending you the last thing. Well, then he said, if you don't do what I'm asking you to do, I'm going to post the pictures that you've already sent me. I'm going to tag you in them. I'm going to share them with your friends and family. So now she's in this position where this guy that she thought, hey, he loves me, he's safe, he would never show this to anybody, is now using that to essentially blackmail her into giving more and more of the same content to her. So let me tell you for a second, before I do that, I want to acknowledge something, because I can get like kind of harsh about this, and that's not my goal. I don't want to be condemning. Guys, as a guy, I acknowledge, like, we live in a culture where masculinity is very, very narrowly defined, and it's very much involves like women, sexual conquest of women, all that kind. There's like a lot. Do you guys feel that? Like, if you're being on, maybe nobody's gonna nod. It's kind of awkward, but who would acknowledge, like, there's so much pressure, especially like in high school, related to just girls generally? No? Okay.
I'm not
Thank
a guy,
you.
but
Thanks for
I
that.
get that.
You get that.
Because most of my friends are guys. And they've complained about the same thing before.
Yeah. And I was in high school 20 years ago. I'm aging myself, but I
8
remember.
years he was in high school. He knows what he's
It took
talking
me
about.
a long time, guy. I really know high school well. But I remember, like, guys were trying to get that stuff from girls, and it wasn't because they knew what to say to get it. I love you, I care, but that's not what they were telling their buddies when they were passing the phone around, right? And then on the flip side, girls, like, you are growing up in a culture that's become so hypersexualized and so much about just your body and your appearance, and what you have to offer essentially is physical, and you're trying to compete with all that noise to be noticed and to have, like, to feel special to somebody. So when you meet someone and you think that person fits that, hey, they care about me, they're affectionate, and then they, in the context of you feeling like they love and care about you, are pressuring you to send stuff to them, that once it's gone, you have no control over where that thing's gonna go or what's gonna happen, right? So I'm sensitive to both. Like, guys, I know the pressure, girls, you, especially y'all, the pressure to, like, meet this expectation that guys have of you. But now I'm gonna tell you the risk that you're facing if you participate in this. If there is someone underage, under the age of 18, and you get them to send you a picture, or you receive a picture, or you show someone a picture of that girl in any state of nudity, you are in possession of child pornography, which is a felony offense, and you are subject to carrying the charge of a sex offender, okay? You're like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, I'm underage. she's my girlfriend, no, it doesn't matter. You are in possession of child pornography. Now, we talked about this earlier. Let's say you're on a family plan and your parents are paying the phone bill, or your parents bought that phone for you. They, by law, are also in possession of child pornography, even if they didn't know you were engaged in the activity. Y'all, this is nothing, like from a legal perspective, this is not something to mess around with. So it's not worth it, okay? Girls, it's not worth it to send. Guys, it's not worth it to receive. Like, even if you're not convinced by the, hey, let's honor each other, let's not break everything down to like the basics of sexuality, be convinced by the potential risk that you face. When that girl came up to me, I stepped aside, I called the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, I gave them the guy's name and phone number, and then they followed it up from there. Like, that's how serious it is. So any questions about sexting before keep moving? Yeah.
What if you're just scrolling like through Instagram or you're just on Snapchat and then you suddenly just get a pop-up and someone sent you something and they send you a picture that you don't want to see, you didn't ask for, there was no conversation, it was just totally random. Are you still guilty of possessing this when you didn't ask for it or even acknowledge?
What you want to do, especially if it's a...
repeat that so they can
Yeah, I'm sorry. So the question was, what if you received something that you didn't ask for, you weren't looking for, you didn't pop it in a search engine, right? And you know that it fits this criteria that I'm talking about. The best thing you can do is find somebody you trust, like if it's your parents, school counselor, whatever, and be like, hey, I don't know what kind of situation this puts me in, but I want to. If it's Snapchat and it's gone, no, obviously don't screenshot it, right? Because now you are choosing to possess it. But if it's there and gone, like you don't want to store it. Y'all, you might think if I click on something, as long as I don't download it or save it, I won't get caught. I know tons of guys who have been prosecuted for child pornography by clicking a link because they trace your IP history, okay? So tell somebody, if it's sent to you, tell somebody, let them see you delete it. If you need to call, like, this may sound like hyper crazy, but if you even need to just call like your local sheriff's office and say, hey, I got this, it wasn't solicited, what should I do from a legal standpoint? They'll be like, hey, just don't worry about it, just delete it and go on your way. And if somebody's harassing you, that's a whole nother issue, right? But no, that would not be a basis for liability. Yeah. Other questions? All right, so last topic I want to talk about is pornography. So I'm going to jump that slide for a minute. So this guy right here, CEO of a company, lives in Buford now. He lived in Sugarloaf Country Club 10 years ago. He's married, still is married. This is not a hypothetical, this is a real story. Has 3 kids, one of them a daughter of his own. He is making really, really good money. He's very established in his profession of internet security. But for 25 years of his married life, he's been a sex addict, basically, paying for sex with women in prostitution. He self-reports over hundreds of times. Actively, daily looking at pornography. He gets so skewed. So what he winds up doing is he finds a sex ad online, he responds to it, goes, meets up with the guy, pays him $300, winds up having sex with a 12-year-old girl, okay? So he claims, I had no idea she was 12, she looked older, I thought she was of age. I think it's a crock, but whatever, maybe he was so distorted in his mind with all the stuff that he really couldn't ascertain ages anymore. I don't know. But here's a guy who had everything. Like, he lived in a country club community, top of his game, married, kids, living the life. But where it all started for him was an addiction that he had developed to pornography, and then when he desensitized to pornography, he said, I had to go find the real thing, like it wasn't enough anymore. So I'm gonna flip back. Now, I'm not the guy who says, hey guys, if you look at pornography, you're gonna become this guy right here. That would not be doing you justice to say that. But what I will say is, of all the guys that we've worked with, the sex offenders, the sex buyers, all these guys that we meet along the journey that have been incarcerated, that get reformed, they come out and work with us, they all say that it started with pornography and the desensitization that happened. So I want to hit on 3 things. There was a global study done of women in trafficking. There were 8 countries where they interviewed women that were survivors, and they said, how many of you, while being trafficked, were also filmed in pornographic videos? 50%. So what that means is when we go and consume pornography, we don't know if we're getting consenting or if we're getting somebody who's in a situation of forced prostitution or sex trafficking. There's no such thing. You know, we talk about blood diamonds. Like, I want to know that my diamond was made by or mined by free people that weren't enslaved. That does not exist in pornography. You don't know the product and the behind the scenes of what you're getting. I'm not coming at this holier than thou. I looked at pornography for 13 years. Till I was 26 years old. It jacked up my relationships, it jacked up my outlook on life, it jacked up my emotions and my mind. All of that, thankfully, has been kind of rewired and undone. But what pornography does is it conditions you constantly to be dissatisfied with one person over time. It conditions you, every time I go look, I'm gonna look for something else depicted. It trains you for instant gratification. Whenever I feel a sexual desire, boom, I can just go access pornography, look at it, meet that need. That's really not how real world relationships work. What that conditions the appetites of sex buyers. So on this point right here, what it does for the victims, let's go back, the average age, 12, 13, 14 years old. So that teenager in that hotel room has this 50-plus-year-old man coming to see her. Guess what has shaped what he's coming there to do? The time he just spent on the computer looking at porn. Okay, my wife's not gonna do that. I'm gonna go pay somebody to do that, okay? So he shows up. So what's the best way to train a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old to give that guy what he wants and what he's paying to get? Show her the same thing that he just got revved up on, right? So a lot of child victims of trafficking report that before they ever saw their first customer, they were shown hours of pornography to learn the terminology, what he's going to be looking for, how he expects her to act. The whole notion of pornography is just a victimless crime, nobody gets hurt. I would encourage you guys to research testimony of people who've left the pornography industry. That 5, 10, 15-minute clip is the product of hours of production. And in that production, especially what the women talk about is, one, and y'all, this is where I'm going to say, be mature with me, please, for like 3 minutes. The guys are getting injections into their penises because they cannot maintain the erection for the length of time that they're filming. So the guys are actively bleeding on set. The girls, because of what their bodies are being subjected to over the course of the filming, are taking breaks to go vomit in the bathroom, use drugs because they can't emotionally and physically take what's happening to them. And there's all these people leaving the industry now saying, this destroyed my life. Like they came into it usually out of a place of brokenness. They've developed substance abuse issues, mental health issues. I don't know if any of y'all saw this, but my news feed blew up. Within like 30 days, 5 young women under the age of 25 committed suicide after acting in pornography films. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but y'all, this is not the fantasy that we're being sold by the industry. And the last thing I'll say about it is, in California, where a lot of the industry exists, there is this big move on behalf of the workers that they would pass a law that required that any pornography film that the actor had to wear a condom for the safety and protection of everybody involved so that they weren't spreading STDs. The porn industry, the major companies behind most of the production, hired lobbyists to fight that bill because their argument was it's not going to be as enjoyable for the consumer if we have to have the actors wearing condoms. So they don't care. They are not in it for people. They're not in it for the consumer. They're in it for the bottom line. And the pornography industry makes more than Major League Baseball, football, basketball, and hockey combined. And think about how intentional they are selling jerseys and tickets and TV time and advertising, the pornography industry makes more than all of that in the US alone. So it's a very intentional industry. I went down a sidetrack a little bit, but I'm going to pause again. And guys, look, I know I may be talking about concepts that you're like, I'm not sure if I'm there with you yet. Like, I don't know if I buy into everything you're saying. That's okay. Research it, guys. I'm not here to like sell you a bill of tricks. I'm not here to ruin your lives. I'm here hoping that we can give you some tools and information that's going to spare you a lot of difficulty and pain that we've seen so many others have to go through. So I'm going to pause. Yeah.
You didn't give the website for that 10-minute video of women and.
Oh, yeah. So if you guys want to go look at some of these testimonies for yourself of people leaving the industry, there's an organization called Pink Cross Foundation. It's entirely former people in the industry. It's not people like us. It's people who've been there. There's former producers, male actors, female actresses, and they've gone to Congress and testified. They're talking about the harm that the pornography industry played out in their own lives. So you guys can go research that if you're interested. Questions? How are we on time, Ms. Howell? 8 minutes, great. Anybody?
I know this is a tough one. I totally obviously the intention, but I know it's hard to maybe even formulate a question right now.
Sure.
I have a question, Jeff, on the FBI or finding people that are looking at pornography, child pornography. You said they use their IP number, right? How do they do that? And is everybody's number out there that they can search, or do they follow the stream of pictures to your computer? How's that work?
It's kind of scary and shocking how easy it is. Unless you're like a brilliant expert on using the dark web, where it pings your IP address through 150 different cities before it ever lands on your laptop. But basically, like, they're monitoring sites that they know are purveyors of child pornography, and they're catching all the pings that come through there. They get a warrant, they track the IP address, and they've got you. Like, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you're wireless or what. It doesn't matter how you do it. Like, we know somebody that was in our network that 2 years after he even accessed the material, the FBI came knocking on his door because they had traced down that he had saved an image.
Went to his parents' home first,
Yeah.
because that's where the internet was hooked up to, and questioned his parents, and then located him here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So you shared about all the harms of pornography when it did to your own life. So for you, how did you, I know it's really quick, how did you walk out of that and kind of find a good medium of healthy respect for your wife, and be able to kind of rewire your brain from that instant gratification, instant question? But
Yes. So the question was, because I alluded to my own like journey down that road with pornography, and how did that kind of walking it back process look? If y'all are interested, there's a book called Wired for Intimacy: How Pornography Hijacks the Male Brain, and it's a neurologist who wrote the book. It is fascinating what pornography taps into. One, the release of dopamine in your brain. If anybody does any kind of activity that gives you adrenaline or gives you excitement, like whether it's skateboarding or riding a bike or snow skiing or whatever, that's your brain's response to something that you enjoy. Well, the brain releases dopamine when pornography is viewed, which encourages the behavior of continuing to look at pornography. There's something called mirror neurons that fire in your brain that communicate to your body that, hey, what you're viewing, that sexual experience you're viewing, your body thinks that it's actually participating in it. So all the physiological responses in your personal physical body for sexual encounter make you feel like you're entering into that, but just through the visual component of it. And then there's this whole concept of, it's basically like a forest in your brain of neurons that, and if any of you guys are actually, this is your field of labor, forgive me for slaughtering it with all the terminology, but essentially what you do, like what I had to determine in my own life, was what are the things that trigger me to look at pornography? Because usually there's something like a sense of rejection or anger or stress or tiredness that at some point I turned to pornography. And now what I've done over time is I've walked that path so often that it's not even a conscious thing that I think about anymore. When a trigger would come, I would just automatically respond to that trigger by going to pornography, and then pornography would create this sense of euphoria and dopamine and everything else that was happening, and then at the end of it I'd be left, well, that didn't resolve anything. Like, it made me forget about it for however long, but it didn't resolve anything. But the cool way the brain works is when you figure out what your triggers are, and this can be anything, this could be substance abuse, this could be eating, whatever things you have in your life that feel like unhealthy coping mechanisms, when you begin to identify that and say, man, I just got stressed out, I'm gonna go work out instead. Hey, this just happened, I'm gonna go for a walk instead. Then that, basically that image of the forest grows back, and you've kind of reset the habit, or you've reset that pattern in your life. So there's a lot more to it than that. For me, like my faith and my faith community played a big role in the healing process and the way I view women and understand the world and sexuality, but that's a talk for another time. But in a nutshell, like if you're thinking, man, I'm in this stuff and I don't want to be, but I don't know how to get out, I just want to tell you, like, there is hope for that. And it's not something that you're forever bound to or stuck in. So,
That's good.
Other questions? You guys did not know we were going to be talking about this stuff today. I thank you guys. Honestly,
thank you
you
very
did
much.
handle it
Appreciate
very
you guys.
maturely. Thank you for those who did ask questions. Thank you in the back row for all the answers that you knew and shouted out, so it wasn't just me. It's great. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all for being here. There's just a couple minutes left. So just like it may have been hard for you to sit in it, don't ever forget how hard sometimes it is to deliver the information as well. So thank you very much for not shying away from difficult conversations that I think probably are more practical than some of the internet awareness y'all have had before in the past. So I hope this has been beneficial for you. And also, if there are follow-up questions, you are welcome to see the teacher that brought you, and I can be a conduit for that to get follow-up questions, or if there was something you weren't comfortable asking in a public format. And the same for you guys at East Hall. We haven't really said that every time, but any questions you have, we will make sure that we gather the answers and resources as well that are beneficial to you guys. So, and thank you to the teachers who have been tirelessly bringing students all day long. So thank you.
Good job, guys.
Good. That's going to be in a minute. So thank you.